I'll be honest, if you told me this episode would contain Polly fighting a bunch of infants, Cactuar from Final Fantasy, and then Troy Baker as a mall cop, probably wouldn't have believed the last two. Okay, well, maybe Troy Baker as a mall cop makes a little too sense for, like, Cactuar? Okay. How's everyone doing today, guys? My name's Steve Goes. This is Amphibia. Yeah, we got ourselves another fun little episode here. This is episode 42A. Hop till you drop. Yeah, yeah. Also, a very accurate way to sum up this episode. um, really enjoyed that. I mean, in terms of nice little 11-minute quote unquote filler episodes, at this point, you can't even argue that these are filler episodes because even though these don't, in the long run, add too much to the story, there is still a lot to the story regardless. And so, this one being how the planters need to learn to adjust to the new world they're in, much like how Anne had to adjust when she was in Amphibia. Of course, for the planters, they think it's going to be a little bit easier because there's not a bunch of giant hulking monsters trying to eat them. So they think, oh, without that, everything will be a piece of cake. Yeah. But before we get into any of that, I want to quickly talk about the intro again, or the theme song intro. This basically this time around they changed it up. At the end of season 2, they showed us the intro for season 3, and it was nice and cool. But one of the main things about it was one of the final shots was with Anne and all the characters in the background. In the one they showed in season 2, Marcy was there, and she was giving like the peace. She was like kind of giving the peace sign. This time around, she's not there, which of course makes you makes you wonder what's gonna happen. I mean, we know what's gonna happen if we saw the trailer. It's just, I guess it's just kind of what exact direction are gonna take her overall character. It's gonna get interesting. That's all I gotta say about it. But okay, wanted to quickly drop that in. Let's get into the actual episode. So basically, yeah, the whole episode is Anne trying to teach the planters how to adjust to the human world, and then that being because, well, one, the planters being in a whole new world are very curious about pretty much everything. Like, it all starts when Anne tries to just go to the mailbox and get the mail, and the planters were just looking with like bright eyes, wide and like just these puppy-like eyes, asking if they can go with her, and it's literally just to the mailbox. So, but they do get to throw on their disguises, and instead of Holly Sprigg doing the tall person skit, they each have their own little outfits. Like Polly's is really cool, because she has a little coat and a hat, and she's got a wig, so she does legit look like a little kid. Granted, yeah, she's a tadpole with legs, so there's that one factor. But then you have Sprigg, who it's really clever with Sprig because he actually has hair. He actually lets that run down. He actually lets that loose, and he's got some small shoes that he's wearing. He's got a little jacket of his own, but he's also wearing a mask, which nowadays doesn't seem that weird. So I mean, Sprig has a nice little cover up, and Hop Pop of the three, and they even make a joke about this later on. He's got the trench coat, he's got the fedora, and he's got like them glasses, and so it's like a little suspicious. Again, we'll get to that later on. But yeah, so they just go out, and Anne is like, okay, this is super easy, grabs the mail, turns around, planters are all gone, and we basically get like the three things that Anne needs the planters to get a hold of, and basically that's for each character. So the first one being Polly with her temper. Like, she tries to talk with some kids, but they don't, like, they're on a bike and a scooter, I think, or a skateboard, I forget what it was, but basically they don't stop, and they nearly run over Polly. I mean, it's hard to really argue what exactly what they were gonna do. Polly jumps out of the way, but then she calls him out on it. And of course, they stop, turn around, and they're just like, what did you just say to us? So, basically, yeah, Polly, obviously, as we have seen throughout the show, likes to get into fights, has a very, barbarian-like personality to herself, so obviously in the human world, that isn't something that does not fly at all. For Spring, it's more of being too curious with everything, and like, as Anne puts it, he almost turned into wood chips in this episode, because he sees a guy tossing a branch into a wood chipper, and so he gets very curious, and luckily Anne is there to get him out of that. Yeah, that's even though they don't go through with it, because why would they? That idea alone is enough to be like, yeah, this is interesting. And Hop Pop, he is so gullible to everything in the human world now, is that he has to deal with all these scams. Like, literally, the running gag in this episode is like nearly every second of Hop Pop, at least in the first half, is him talking about this scam, or is like, oh, free trip to wherever I want just by talking to you. Oh, that's great. Oh, free money, and I just gotta give you my social security number. Oh, it's like, yeah, yeah. So I love how Anne not only has to teach him this, because she's obviously the expert when it comes to the humor, but I like how her parents also acknowledge that this is kind of like being a parent, like, they're always on the move, they're always curious about everything, they have their issues that they have to sort out, so it's understandable that it's gonna be super stressful, and it won't always work right away, as her parents try to say. Let it, like, be patient with it, let it just calmly continue, just let it, basically just steady pace it, don't try and like cram it all in, don't try and go throw them into the fire. But of course, Anne is super impatient with that and immediately throws him to the fire, and her definition of throwing him into the fire is by taking him to the mall. And so this is where Anne takes the advantage of letting the three kind of work out their issues, but at the same time, she goes a little too far in that, and then by that I mean, she gives them, it's a test, and she says if they fail the test, she says, in a very creepy, demonic look, she's like, then you, like, they ask, what happens if we fail, and then she says, then you're not suitable to leave the house ever. Like, so the way she just does it is just like, she like turns back like this, and she's like, it's just super creepy. And obviously the planters get very scared about that, and so they're like, okay, we'll do our test. And so again, with how Anne sees what their each issue is for Sprig, Hop Pop, and Polly, she gives them tests that kind of reflect those issues. So Polly's test, for example, is she has to go into construct a carnivore, nice little parody of Build-A-Bear, and she has to go in and build her little own carnivore without getting into a fight. And of course, Polly thinks, oh, that's gonna be a piece of cake. No, it's not, because she goes in and there's a bunch of babies. So of course, not only does it mean babies are gonna kind of do what they want because they're babies, they're curious, they don't know anything. So Polly's got to deal with that, but also the babies can't talk. So of course, Polly is pretty much in like the worst possible environment for a kid with a little bit of a temper. But yeah, so that's her test. Sprig's test is he has to walk through an entire art gallery without touching anything, which of course is, you know, not an easy thing for someone who's super curious and wants to touch everything. Again, him being a kid too is like he's so curious about everything. He wants to touch. He's like, I gotta touch everything. Like he's so tempted, and he literally is battling himself so much he literally starts punching himself in the face. And I love how someone walks by and it's like, that's probably some performance or something. And then Hop Pop, his task is, I love the way they put this up. It's just like, and being, just like, Hop Pop, your task is to walk down Kiosk Alley without being scammed or, you know, without letting anyone give you something for free. But then, of course, Hop Pop questions like, well, why is it free, Ann? Do they think I'm gullible and a sucker or something? And then it's like, yeah. Honestly, yeah. So, I do kind of like the twist that happens, though, with Hop Pop. Whereas Sprig and Polly, it's more of just them kind of letting things in. Like, Hop Pop finds a little bit of a loophole with this, Kiosk Alley thing. And, well, again, we'll get to that. So, of course, each of them think, at first, you know, it's the classic, oh, this is super easy, nothing's gonna go wrong, something goes wrong, they realize, oh, this is much harder than we thought, why did we not listen? Basically, that whole trope. But in this case, I didn't mind it, because, again, they're in a whole new world, so it's understandable that on one hand they think, well, this isn't as bad as our world, so maybe there is something here. Then they discover maybe not. So for Polly's situation, because she's surrounded by babies, she literally looks like she's going through heck to make this carnivore. And eventually it looks like that she does, but then she trips, falls, tosses her toy across the room. Baby picks it up and says, "Destroy." Which is so freaking stupid, but I just love it. Also, I don't know if it was just me or not, but there was a few shots in this particular segment of the episode where the babies kind of reminded me of, like, Rugrats a bit. Like, there were a few shots where they looked like the characters from Rugrats. Like, it was not sure if it was intentional or not, or if it was just me trying to look for some Easter eggs in the background, especially because, with Sprig, with some of the art, like, he walks by some of the art, and you swear, some of them, like, is Easter eggs. Like I said, like, you got, Cactuar in the background. Like, most of the time, like, actually, legit, most of the time, when we focus on Sprig. So, he is super eager to touch some of the art, and at first it seems like, yeah, that is exactly, he can't touch the art, so, you know, he's being basically tortured, but then, and all the meanwhile is monitoring the three upstairs. However, all that goes kind of south when her friend shows up. And so, her name is Gabby. And of course, it's like, yeah, what would happen if Anne ran into someone that she knew outside of her parents? Because it's like, she's been gone for 5 months. It's like, what is gonna happen? And so for this case, this person, Gabby, she shows up and she is very, you know, she's obviously asking a crap ton of questions, but then Anne kind of diffuses it at first by saying, oh, I was just at my family's farm in Alaska. I mean, that could work. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? But then that unfortunately kind of backfires, because then Gabby gives her basically the rundown of what happened in the last 5 months, and by rundown, basically what happened at school. So Anne's kind of being forced to sit or stand there and just take this conversation in, thus making her distracted, so Sprig and Hop Pop take that advantage. Like, they look up and they see her, and they see and they just like see a chance. So Sprig takes it as a chance to touch some of the art touch some of the art, but unfortunately it leads to a literal chain reaction that causes all the art to be destroyed, and it's like very fragile art. But for Hop Pop, it's like I said, he's going down kiosk alleys, so obviously he's trying really hard to avoid all these scammers. And once, much like Sprig, he's kind of fighting himself over it, but he's able to just keep moving. You know, he's like, okay, keep moving, keep moving. But then he gets spotted by a mall cop who pretty sure was voiced by Troy Baker with a little bit of a accent to him. I just love it any time I can figure it out. Or I hope it's Troy Baker. I didn't look it up afterwards because I'm like, I want to believe it's Troy Baker because it definitely sounded like Troy. So he looks at Pop Pop, and like I said, he's got the coat, and he's got the fedora, and wouldn't you know it, there's a sign that's literally right next to the mall cop, stranger danger, and it's the classic like trench coat, fedora, and then you got like the one eye. And so the mall cop takes that as like Hop Pop is up to something, and so he slowly follows Hop Pop. But for Hop Pop, it seems like, yeah, he's like, okay, yeah, he made it through Kiosk Alley, so he's like, yeah, that wasn't so hard. Then he runs into the wishing fountain, which, I love that as he walks in the back, Hop Pop's walking in the background, and in the foreground, you see the sign for the wishing fountain, and it says chlorine, water is chlorine, so it's like, ooh, you kind of know where that's going. And so, yeah, Hop Pop looks in the fountain, sees all the coins that have been tossed in, and so he is just freaking out because it's just like, all these coppers in the water for free. It's just like his temptation just amplifies with that, and he too looks up and sees Anne is distracted, so he takes it as a chance. He rips his coat off, and he's just basically, he's only got pants on and the glasses, and then he jumps in. We don't see anything more than that, at least until when he starts running back to Anne. His pockets are full, he's being chased by the mall cop, and he's green. Like, I love Anne's just completely confused by that. She's like, why are you green? And so Hop Pop just says like it was the cursed fountain that did it. So yeah, that happened. But basically, you kind of imagine what happens after all of that. So, you know, after Anne is able to kind of let Gabby just finish off her conversation, that and the fact that all the chaos going on causes Anne and Gabby to like look down and be like, what the heck is going on? So Anne has to diffuse the whole situation, and she does she first saves Sprig, then she saves Polly, who is being pursued by a crap ton of mothers who are so mad. I mean, yeah, start beating up a bunch of little infants. Yeah, I mean, if these were like toddlers or maybe like 5 or 6 year olds, I would have been like, oh, I see what they're doing with it. Because the way the moms are talking, or at least this one mom was like, there's a little rat that's been begging under our precious angels. And I'm like, okay, they're babies and they're babies. I'll let that slide. But if it was like, yeah, if it was like 6-year-olds or 5-year-olds, then it's like, okay, your parent, okay, spoiled kids. But yeah, so Anne is able to get Polly out of the situation because with Sprig, you know, they do a reverse of the tall person skit. This time Sprig is the legs and Polly's the head, and they just use the hoodie this time. So, you know, they're just standing there and they're like, where did that little rat go? And Anne's like, I don't know, but you can file a complaint with the mall cop over there. So of course the moms go up to the mall cop, and that thus gives Hop Hop the ability to escape. The group gets out of there, and of course, you know, they just like Sprig, Hop Hop, and Polly are like, well, we all failed that. But of course, Anne realizes that she might have gone a little too far, throwing him into the fire. And I like the way they kind of reconcile, because Anne's like, I thought throwing it to the fire would work. I mean, it worked for me in Amphibia, and the Plantars get a laugh out of that because they say they talk about some of the things that Anne did that almost got herself killed. Like she's like, what did they say? She was looking at her phone when she walked in the quicksand was a funny one. Then apparently when she was sleeping, she nearly got taken away by, I think they said like some skull suckers or something. Like it was like, what the heck? But basically, yeah, the Plantars are just saying, okay, yeah, you weren't like a full-on expert in our world right out of the gate, so it makes sense that we won't be full-on experts in your world. And so they reconcile, come together, and then of course they ended with like, okay, we gotta get Hop Pop, we gotta help Hop Pop, and Hop Pop's like, yeah, I'm burning. It's like, yeah, chlorine can do that to you if you're either in it for too long or there's too much of it. Public cool, you know. But yeah, that was pretty much the episode. Nice little first 11-minute segment of the season, especially after what happened with the last episode. You know, it's like I like that this isn't their first taste of the real world, but this was like their first test of the real world. Like the last episode was just them at the supermarket, you know, them getting like letting things sink in, but everything was interrupted when the robot attacked. So this time they actually are allowed to kind of like let things sink in, but unfortunately their curiosity and their personalities ended up being a bit of a downfall, but luckily they were able to get out of it because that's what they do. They always get out of situations that seem hard to get out of. Yeah, so yeah. It was fun. I'm glad I got to see this one. Definitely got a few laughs out of it, so that's what the show does. So all right, that's everything for this part of episode 42. So hope you guys enjoyed that. We will head into part two of episode 42 in the next video. So see you guys there.